Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba. Now, those of you that have seen these episodes before are probably wondering, why am I sitting down? Well, in fact, today I'm not here to necessarily give you a lecture. In fact, I'm here today to talk about a very serious topic. In fact, one of which that has probably impacted you in a direct manner, or perhaps in an indirect manner. The American Cancer Society estimates that in 2018 there will be over 260,000 new cases of breast cancer. Now, anybody who's afflicted with breast cancer, or any kind of cancer for that matter, faces a long road of obstacles and challenges. Emotions, doctor's visits, second opinions, third opinions, fourth opinions, and heartache felt across friends and family. However, one author, through humor and knowledge, very much in the spirit of this show, has authored a new book to serve as a guide for those who are afflicted with breast cancer and for those with loved ones afflicted with breast cancer. Dr. Tali Lando Aronoff of Westchester Medical Center, located here in Valhalla, New York, has written a new book called To Hell and Back, Everything You Need to Know Along the Road. Tali, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'd like to kind of crack right into this book. Now, you're a mother of three,
yes,
a wife, and a busy surgeon, now as well as you were even before you had the cancer. So set us with a foundation for what was going on. What were some of your greatest joys, your greatest challenges? What was daily life like for you back then?
I think, like many working women, it was a juggling act. You know, you were trying to not drop the most important ball at every single moment in time. And so it was a really, delicate balance that was maintained between me and my spouse and people I worked with and my babysitter. And so, there wasn't room for some major other problem to occur.
Right.
And then, boom, it happened. So, the first thing that, down the road that started it all was that my daughter was born prematurely. So we were going through the neonatal intensive care unit at White Plains Hospital and thinking, okay, we're just getting our lives back on track, just barely. And maybe 6 weeks after going back to work, I discovered that I had breast cancer.
Right. Now, you discovered that you had breast cancer and it just kind of happened. So you would said in the book that you had accidentally found it. Mm-hmm. Now, were you, and I know that this is usually prescribed that women do this, were you giving yourself annual or self breast examinations or?
Well, I should have been.
Yeah. I
meant to, and I definitely did these spot checks that women tend to do.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I wasn't vigilant about it, and so. I discuss it a little more in detail in the book, but unfortunately my father had recently been diagnosed with cancer. And it was a very strange, night where I was really stressed out, not sleeping well. And I literally by accident just kind of brushed my hand against my chest, not purposely looking for anything, but I think as a surgeon, I know what cancer feels like,
Sure.
and I immediately felt this lump. And at that moment in time, it was one of those, when you're not sure, am I imagining this? I actually wasn't sure if I was awake or asleep because it was maybe 2 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
And unfortunately, it was still there when I woke up in the morning, so I knew it was real. But it was really by accident, but something I think something in the back of my mind must have made me do that.
Sure.
I don't think anything is a total accident.
No, nothing is ever a total accident. And now realizing that you have cancer, but also realizing that your father had cancer, how did you reconcile that? At one point you have to mourn for your father, but you also have to mourn for yourself. So what was that like dealing with two complex cases of cancer in one family?
I think even to this day, I'm not sure, as terrible as it sounded on the outside that these things coincided, in a strange way, it helped me personally because my father, I went into, doctor mode for my father.
Right.
And it was what my family needed. I'm the only physician in my immediate family.
Right.
And so in a way, I didn't have time to dwell on the crap that was happening on my end,
Yes.
and to stay scared and to stay maybe immobilized by it. I had to go forward because I didn't even have the guts to tell my parents until the last possible minute, because they were in, crisis.
Right.
So it's like, on the one hand, I felt robbed of that me focus.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it made me be purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think for someone that's how I spend my life taking care of other patients, and so instead of it all falling apart, it kind of kept me together.
Yeah.
Although it was just like, how is this happening? Like, how are these two, and like I describe it in my book, but it really felt like this, when you watch those commercials about depression and the black cloud is following the person around, and I just felt like, how did this black cloud, come on to my family, who had, been a very healthy, lucky, kind of, prosperous family otherwise.
Right.
So it's a lot to take in.
Oh, absolutely. And things fall apart immediately, and then you're trying to figure out, how do I manage all of these things at once?
Yeah.
Of course. So being involved in the diagnostic process, and granted that you're a surgeon and a trained medical doctor, what were some of the biggest physical and emotional challenges that you had as you were starting to go through this process of, okay, I have breast cancer, now what?
I think the first thing, and this is, all of us are busy in our lives. It's just the modern way that it is. We're juggling lots of things, if it's professionally, if it's our kids' involvement in other things. And so my first emotion was, I do not have time for this. Like, this is not going to fit. Because even though they don't really lay out the landscape in a clear way, which I think is, it's hard for the doctors, because I've been on the other side of it. They don't have an hour and a half to spend with every patient to explain what are going to be all the steps. So they start to tell you, okay, you're going to have surgery, you're going to have chemo, you're going to be incapacitated by chemo, then you're going to have radiation, surgery is going to keep going, and all of this. And all I could think was, how on earth am I going to do that if I've never been able to go to the dentist, or my primary care doctor? Like, where's that going to fit in? And I think that overwhelming feeling is really common, and the fact is, you rise to the occasion, you make it work, because you don't have a choice.
Right.
So that was, my main emotion was first just, this is not doable.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, no matter where you are, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, it's like, you got to put one foot in front of the other. How are you going to do this? And you just start down the path.
Right.
But I think that the really surprising thing was that being a surgeon, though I understood the lingo really well, so maybe I could shortcut the conversations, it does not emotionally put you in a better place.
Sure, sure.
It's not, I operate on a lot of people, and I feel like I could really do well with calming parents down to have their children have surgery. Totally different when it's you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, in the book, you talked about going to multiple doctors and getting expert opinions and getting that surgical A-team. Do you have any recommendations or considerations that cancer patients should think about when they're trying to elect the right doctor to help them with their treatment?
I do. I think, okay, I had a personal connection to actually the breast radiologist. She was my best friend from medical school.
Right.
And it happened that the team that she works with was in a location that's completely inconvenient for me. It's in Brooklyn. That does not work with my schedule.
Right.
It's really hard to get to.
Sure.
And for follow-ups, you have to really consider it. But the truth is, you need to feel comfortable, and that is a gut feeling. And sometimes you have to meet a bunch of people. I mean, this is New York. There's a lot of excellent surgeons. There's a lot of excellent care. So you gotta know that the convenience is gonna work for you in the long term.
Okay.
Because it's not one or two follow-ups. It's lots of follow-up. Okay. So you have to consider the location.
So location's huge. Okay.
Yeah. You, second of all, need to feel comfortable with your team. Something about them clicks with you.
Okay. Is that more like chemistry?
I think it's chemistry. For some people, maybe that is the name, because the name is what gives them the confidence.
Okay.
But what I just want to emphasize is, Sloan Kettering, for example, it's right here in Manhattan. So everybody, the minute you say cancer, there's this gut reaction to want to run to the big house, right? You just feel like they've seen everything. I do think that is true if you have a very rare malignancy. If you have breast cancer, I think that, you know, forming a personal relationship maybe with a local doctor. Most of the doctors around here are well trained and maybe came from New York City, and they have access to, one of the things that you want is a place that could do something called tumor board, which is where all the doctors, the oncologist, the surgeon, and the radiation oncologist talk about complex cases. Most places in this area have that. And as long as those elements are communicating, because it's the interaction between surgeon and medical and radiation, if you need all those elements, that is what's going to make your journey much easier. So it's kind of knowing that there is a system amongst the doctors for communication, knowing that you have easy access, and then some of it is gut feeling, you know, and if you really can't get a gut feeling because it's just not something that you can do, then you just, you know, recommendations are what you need, you know. I was a little bit luckier because I kind of went directly to people that I was friends with in medical school, and who did you trust that you trained with? But I think even just, you know, mommy websites and listservs, you know, the names keep popping up again and again. There's a reason for it.
Sure. So in evaluating doctors, just as a follow-up to that, are there any particular websites or star ratings that people should be looking out for with some of the doctors that they look for?
You know, it's funny because I recently, you know, Googled myself to see what's out there about me as a surgeon. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of times when people review you, it's because they're upset about some element. And the main things that I found for myself were office staff not being polite on the phone, not getting in fast, or wait times in the waiting room. And so trusting some of these healthcare reviews is really difficult. That's why I keep leaning back to the same thing. It's Facebook pages, especially as a woman and a mom, because they're like a major resource. And so Facebook pages, Google, obviously you could do some of your research, but again, if there are criticisms, just pay attention to what is it that they're criticizing. Because I feel like for me, I looked at the comments, it's like, love the surgeon, not so happy with the front desk or something. So maybe you can deal with the front desk if you're going to love your physician.
Absolutely. Now, in the book, you said you had a C3 diagnosis, which to the layman may not mean much of anything. Why is that diagnosis so unique?
So just to invert it a little bit, so it's 3C.
3C, excuse me.
And what it is that so cancer has 4 stages. One is, well, actually there's 0 stage, so I could take it back. 0 stages, if you're lucky, and you're just doing like a screening mammogram, you might find something that is not considered invasive, so it's kind of pre-cancer, but still needs to be dealt with. Up to 4, where it has spread to other organs of your body. So in my particular case, when I discovered this lump, so everyone was thinking this is great. You found it before you had symptoms, but the lump, unfortunately, is a symptom. It just, you don't feel any different. You feel totally fine. With breast cancer, unlike leukemia or lymphoma, you're not tired, you're not run down. I felt totally normal. And then also, so everyone's thinking this is great. You found it, you're still doing well. Unfortunately for me, once they did the final pathology evaluation, there was a lot of spread locally to the lymph nodes, which is the first place that your cancer spread. And once it's kind of the cat's out of the bag, you start going up in stages, and the kind of, you know, the most advanced stage is stage 4. And unfortunately with stage 4, you're not curable. You're controlled. So you might live for 20 years on medications, but you're not actually cured. Whereas I was at the way end, the line. So there's stage 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then for each stage there's A, B, C. So I'm 3C, which is not where you want to be. And when I was first going down the road, they were like, great, you're stage 1 or 2. The statistics are wonderful for those stages, but your statistics of recurrence and survival start to go down as you get later in the stages. So for me, that was more just this shocking revelation that I'm going to be dealing with this as a risk for many more decades.
Right.
Rather than we threw the kitchen sink at you, we took out all your breast tissue with mastectomy, we gave you chemo, we gave you radiation, you should be cured.
Right, right.
And that's not my reality.
Right, exactly. So you eventually treated this. Obviously, you went through your first surgery. You talked about in the book having some sort of romantic send-off with your husband, and also kind of the emotions that were going through your head. Even as a medical doctor, it seemed as though you were fearful of what might happen with this first surgery. What was that like for you?
You know, I've never been on the other side.
Yeah.
And I am so comfortable in the operating room. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, right? I'm a surgeon. Like, that is where I do my work. And so and anesthesia, I thought, didn't have the same, scare. Every time I talk to a parent, they're always saying, it's not the surgery I'm scared of, it's the anesthesia. And to me, it always seems like, anesthesia is just part of the process. Like, it's fine. But when it's you lying down on that table, and you're this vulnerability where, you are just put completely under. Everything that happens after that point you're not aware of, and you're putting your lives completely in someone else's hands.
Right. Again,
I deal with children, so it's a little bit of a different relationship. I'm not putting adults to sleep. So being put to sleep as an adult was it was a very foreign feeling, and it was very vulnerable. And the romantic send-off was just a funny thing that happened where I played this in my head from the time I was diagnosed until the time of surgery. And then my husband went to the bathroom right before they took me into surgery, and there was no cell phone reception in the hospital. Like, many hospitals don't have good reception, and my cell phone was in the locker. And suddenly he just left, and they wanted to take me, and I was trying to stall, but they wanted to get the day started.
Right.
And I just was like, I guess I'm just going, I don't get to say I love you, and I'll be back, and it just kind of ended abruptly. And so that was just this comical thing where in the last possible second when I was drifting off to sleep, because I had texted him from the phone of one of the surgical residents, just my last ditch effort to say goodbye, I'll see you on the other side. And then he finally texted back literally as the propofol was going in my vein to say, I love you.
Well, thank God.
I know.
Absolutely.
I know, exactly.
So obviously you made through the surgery, but even after the surgery you found showering, using the restroom, and a lot of other things that I think we all take for granted harrowing and very challenging. What was that adjustment like?
I mean, I was never this, dependent person. And I think, I very much prided myself on being able to motor through all these different situations. I had 3 pregnancies. I operated until the day before. And suddenly I have these drains hanging out of me. I don't know how to coordinate all of it. It's the simplest thing, I described, but this was just a very striking moment when I had these, these plastic drains that you have after you have a mastectomy, and then you're not allowed to remove these bandages that are under your arms, and so you get a little stinky.
Yeah.
And I hated that.
Right.
So I wanted to take a lot of showers. It was the way of fixing it.
Of course.
And then I got in the shower, and how do you put 3 drains and soap in your 2 hands, and suddenly I'm in there and I'm all wet and I just panicked, how do I get out of the situation? And do you call for help? But then so it's just some of the practical stuff. Again, no one really tells you, well, what you really need to do is you need to wrap a belt around your waist and then take safety pins and safety pin to your belt, and then you have this system so that you can have your hands free.
Right,
you only figure it out after you've screwed it up. So,
so it's a lot of kind of troubleshooting and trying to figure out, how do I live my life on my own?
Yeah, especially in the first few weeks when you're healing up.
Interesting. In your book, you also talk about shifts in behavior, and so you wound up smoking marijuana, you wound up kind of maybe hiding it from the neighbors, and also being conscious of how you looked. That was something that was very near and dear to your heart, that, you know, wearing lipstick and still looking good and still putting on a face.
Yeah.
So challenging some of society's norms and living the way that you wanted to live, I think, was something that was very significant in the book. What was that like, seeing yourself kind of transform but still work to maintain who you are?
You know, the one thing, and I think it's why the loss of your hair is so impactful, is that, you know, for women, that is often a big symbol of their beauty.
Sure.
And suddenly you have nowhere to hide. You know, you are just, it's just your face. You don't have eyelashes, you don't have eyebrows, you don't have hair. And it's, you know, it's a very, very difficult way to walk around. You don't want to be stared at. And so it was a means of taking control. I didn't mean it to say that I wasn't at home all day wearing makeup, you know, hiding from my kids or from my friends that everything's okay. It was just a certain level of control that you could have so that, yeah, I look like a cancer patient. There is no way to miss me. I mean, I was noticed everywhere I went. But I'm still caring about who I am. I don't want you to be totally distracted by that, to not be able to have a normal conversation with me. I'm still in there, you know? And I think, and also it happens that I had a babysitter at the time, her name was Sylvia. And every once in a while I'd get kind of lazy and I'd be like, I'm just gonna go out to the store. She's like, no, you gotta go put your makeup on. You gotta look better, you're gonna feel better. And, you know, again, I think there's a balance. I don't think you have to focus all of your energy on hiding what is happening to you, but I think that it just makes you feel like you're a little more in control.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in being in control, that also means controlling your own emotions. And in the book, you did talk about having, you know, situational depression and then going into clinical depression. And that's another roller coaster in and of itself. When did you know that there was a shift in your behavior such that it was no longer just having a bad day or being sad, that in fact you were depressed?
I really like the way you phrased that, because I've never said that before, this situational depression going into clinical, and that's exactly what happened. It took me so long to figure out, because these things were really freaking depressing, right? My father, who I loved and was extremely close to my entire life, was dying. And suddenly I have advanced breast cancer, so I didn't count that as depression. So it was a very subtle shift, and it was like a year for me personally of questioning everyone, questioning my doctors, questioning my family members. Are you supposed to feel this way? Before I figured out that it was the clinical depression, because, you know, I just was not feeling joy. It wasn't the classic depression. It was the inability to enjoy things in life that a year after I was done with all my treatment, I felt that I should be. And I really have concerns that this is not addressed, because I brought it up as a physician many times. And most of the answer that I would get is, well, if you feel that way, I can write you a prescription.
Of course.
So then you're still left to figure out whether you should be pursuing it or not. And is the reason that you feel changed because you are changed, and this is the best you can be, meaning this is who you are now. You're not as upbeat and happy a person as you once were. You've been slapped in the face by this disease, and now this is your new normal. And I think I have now encouraged, because unfortunately, since going through this experience and starting to write this book, so many of my friends or friends of friends are starting to experience similar things, calling me, and now I'm saying, you know what, you're not supposed to feel angry and frustrated every day. If you are, something can help you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thankfully, after chemotherapy, here you are today. But you still mention in your book the fear of passing along a cancerous gene to your children, especially, you know, to your daughters. What is that fear like? Have you done anything to be proactive about it, or is it just something that you kind of just deal with?
You know, I just today, I was operating in the morning, and I was talking to one of the anesthesiologists who told me that her best friend, who's an anesthesiologist as well, but I don't know her, had breast cancer, been going through all of the emotional turmoil, and that she is obsessed with testing her young children genetically.
Right.
Now, that was my number one biggest fear. I think after processing that I had cancer, the idea that they were going to identify a specific gene that had a high risk of being passed on, like the BRCA gene, which is a dominant gene, so it's a 50% chance you're going to pass it on, and then it's going to cause cancer if you don't prevent it. I was more scared of that than anything else. And when I went to, most of the cancer centers have a geneticist that you do consult with, so you're not just left alone to figure this out. And until I got those results back, I mean, that was the most fearful several weeks waiting to, it's not just as simple as just the one BRCA gene. And the thing is that I discussed this again in my book, where I thought, oh God, I'm in the clear.
Yeah.
I was so happy. And then I met an oncologist in a social situation, and she just kind of threw it out there, well, we haven't figured it out yet.
Oh my goodness.
And I think that's your ongoing fear. I do sometimes have 3 daughters, and I look at them and I feel, I have some crazy thoughts, like, let's just let's never let them grow breasts. I I don't ever want them to be facing this. And it's like a ticking time bomb, even though for me, a specific gene was not identified. Unfortunately, with genetics, people think that they're genetically okay, and then we get more information and you find a new gene. Right.
Tali, thank you so much for coming here. If there's anything you'd like to say to the audience, you feel free to tell them about your website, anything else that they need to know to get into contact with you.
Okay, so thank you.
Sure.
The book is not out yet. It is going to be within the next several months. So again, it's called To Hell and Back, Everything You Need for the Road in Between. And I do have a website. It's called drtalyaronoff.com. And there'll be more information on it, pictures that kind of describe the stages that I went through that hopefully will help anyone in the audience that needs, needs something to lean on, and hopefully also some blogs and samples of the book beyond what is in print.
Terrific. Tali, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Late Night Learning. Please feel free to email me at latenightlearning@gmail.com. Keep laughing and keep learning.